To purchase a drawing task for this lesson, go to creativitybridge.com and click on the upper menu. There you can click on our first unit, Perception and Drawing, and go down to our current assignment, Alignment Guides. Click on the Purchase Lesson PDF button, and there you can click on I want this. So here's drawing task number 2 of the 5 drawing tasks available in this lesson on our Creativity Bridge website. And here we have this man with clasped hands like this. And so you can notice the difference between this one and the previous grid drawing. Specifically, the grid cells are starting to get bigger and bigger. We want to approach this like training wheels. We will eventually want to get rid of them, and where the perimeter of the drawing is the cell itself, okay? But we're not quite there yet. So what we have here is a much simpler drawing, but the grid cells are bigger. So it's going to force us to work a little bit more to make sure that everything's in the right spot. So looking at this image, it's kind of confusing as to what would be the best thing to draw. So what I would suggest, what I tell my students, is to draw the largest object first. And in this case, it would be his face. So what I want to do first is, and I'm going to use my highlighter to show you, is I want to establish this line right here. This line that represents the side of his face, I think is going to be a good start. This part right here, you know, these lines basically contain his face. I want to put that in first and make sure everything fits in, similar to what we did with the elephant. A lot less lines to number. You can number them if you want. 1 through 5 this way, 1 through 7 down this way on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this line here. So I'm going to start at this point. I see that this line basically starts right at 4. And again, we want to basically connect the dots. We want to find out where the drawing is touching the grid. And we're going to place that line where it should go. Now notice in this drawing that the lines have thickness in them, okay? The lines aren't like the elephant drawing. There's thin lines and thick lines, and they change in width. So for the purposes of what I'm going to show you right now, let's just use our mechanical pencil or whatever pencil you're using, and let's keep the lines uniform. Later on, if you want to thicken the lines and make them thin like you see here, that's fine. But let's focus right now on making sure that the drawing is accurate, okay? So I look at this point here. I see this line. It's not a pure vertical. It starts to flare out this way a little bit. And it's at its widest point below the halfway point. So I'm going to guess around here. And then there's a direction change as it swings back this way. Okay, and again, I'm not drawing the whole width of this line, so I'm basically drawing something kind of in the middle. This line basically comes really close, flares out this way, and comes really close to that intersection. Maybe that should be a little bit lower in the flaring. There we go. There's a slight negative space here. This line, does it touch between 3 and 4 right in the middle? No, maybe to the right, huh? Maybe right around here. And then this line drops like that. There's a slight bump right there. See that? Maybe I should fix mine a little bit. There we go. And this line stops almost dead center in this cell, maybe a little bit above it, right? Right around here. So I've got this line. Great. Okay. Now let's go ahead and work on this line. Right here, we're about almost halfway. About here, slightly to the left. I want to find where, again, the drawing is touching the intersection of where the drawing touches the grid. We're making guesses, but our guesses are getting better and better as we become more and more talented. There's a slight line direction here, and this again is near the intersection. I can make these lines thicker later. Here this line drops down, has a sharp hook up, and then drops almost vertically and then swings this way. There's a lot of stuff happening in this line. Now again, I'm going to be holding my pencil in weird positions just for the sake of the shooting of the film. But you hold your pencil in whatever position works for you. All right, good. So I've contained the face. Great. Now let's go ahead and start doing some of the larger lines here that are happening. This one's easy. This little piece of hair kind of flares out. I don't want to go too far. See how this line isn't quite at the halfway point between 4 and 5? If this is halfway, it's definitely to the left. So something like that works. Good. Now what I want to do is establish this line. I'll use my highlighter so we can see it better. I want to get this line going all the way up like this. That's a fun line. Let's go ahead and do that. So that means this line curves up slightly above horizontal 2, drops down. There's this little point right here to about here. It's close to the intersection, but not that close. There is a definite line direction as it comes up, swings back slightly. And then we got these cool like jagged things here, these little points. I want to make sure I place those right. And I want to make sure I end up in the right spot. So it's going to go something like this. And then this goes something like that. This line has a drop as it goes almost to the halfway point. Do not hold your pencil like this. I'm just doing it so you can see. And it swings up like that. Got his hair, great. Now let's do those eyes, those piercing, penetrating eyes this dude has. So, all right, so let's figure it out. When I look at his eyes, to me they have, especially this one, has a shape like a football. See that football shape that he has right there? So I want to figure out where that eye begins and where that eye ends. And I can go right to left, left to right. I notice though that this corner is right at vertical 4. So that's a big clue. So that means that this eye is probably around here. It's definitely not low. It can't be too close to the intersection. So I'm guessing it's around here. Now there are a variety of things that I can do here. I'm going to do an axis line, right? I can use strategies from other lessons and apply it here. Imagine if I were to draw a straight line that goes corner to corner. That's going to give me the angle of what the eye is doing. And it stops at about here, I would guess. Now that I have that, that's going to act like a frame to help me figure out what the eye should be doing. This line rises up. It's at its widest point here, so that's its widest point about here. Then it drops down, making that football shape. And the same thing's happening here and here. And then we look at the negative space of the white of his eye. This side is bigger and this side is smaller. So that works out just fine. Now that I have that, that's really going to help me figure out where everything else goes. This line goes about here, does this thing. He's got those big eyebrows. For this, because it's so thick, I will draw the top and bottom edges of it. It goes up like this and drops down this way. It goes like this, even higher, drops down like that. Then he's got this line here that goes above horizontal 2 and drops down. This line this way, line here. And then like I mentioned, if you want to thicken up these lines later, you're welcome to do so. Great. Now let's go ahead and establish this other eyeball. Not quite a football, but generally like a football. Okay. I want to figure out where this is going to be. It's not quite at halfway between 2 and 3. It's above it. And the angle is very similar. The axis line will be very similar to the other eyeball. And that works out, right? It's going like this. It's probably starting about here and ending about here. So that's going to put our eye going up this way. The widest point is here, but notice that the width of the eye is diagonal. The widest point. So I want to make sure that I compensate for that. And then the whites of the eyes are like negative space. And then I can start to put in everything else. This arcs above. No, well, that was pretty close actually. More like that. Now, the face may look a little bit different. That's because I'm not putting in the thickness of the lines yet. Once the thickness of the lines would be put in, then it's going to take up the space that it should. But as basically kind of like a wireframe for the drawing, it's working out okay. There's this line that goes kind of in the same direction. This one goes lower, hooks back. So the puzzle pieces are fitting in a way that we want them to. This line right here is near the intersection of 2 and 2. So that would be about here. It drops down to here. But remember, the grids are not going to be sticking around. We don't want them to stick around forever. I mean, there'll be times when you would want to use a grid system. There are times when I use a grid system. When I'm drawing or painting something on a large scale, I'll have the image gridded up. I'll replicate the grid on a larger scale on the target piece, the canvas or whatever I'm going to work on, to make sure that things are in proportion. So using a grid is a very useful tool if you're doing stuff like that. But remember, what we want to do is develop our perception skills. Grids are really helpful for that, but at a certain point, like the song says, let it go, let it go. And that's right there, that's right here. So everything's starting to work out. Now I can continue with the face, but what I want to talk about right now, focus on next, are the hands, because sometimes people get frustrated with hands. There are some people who got frustrated with the hands from the when the drawing task from previous lesson. So let's go ahead and break this down into something simple. Let's view these hands as one big unit, okay? And then we're going to break it down into smaller units. So you look at this like, oh my gosh, what a mess, all these lines. Let's look at the outside perimeter of this. When I look at this thing, at these hands as a unit, it kind of has a silhouette kind of like a house. The sides and the roof, see that, if you can visualize that, okay? So what I want to do then for my drawing is I want to figure out where these line changes happen and connect the dots. So like this point right here where the wrist is, it's above 7 slightly between 2 and 3. So that's going to be, my guess is around here. This point is above 5, almost directly vertical, right? This point is between 3 and 4 around here, and that would make sense. This point is between 4 and 5, below horizontal 5. My guess around here. And then this point here is below 7, between 4 and 5, maybe around here, vertical drop. These 5 points are really going to help me figure out what the hand is doing. So now it's basically, again, connecting the dots. A lot of what we do in drawing is about simplification, about taking things that are complex and figuring out a way of simplifying it so we can understand it, so the viewer can understand it. And so what we're doing here is we're taking this complex image, looking at it as one large shape and simplifying it. Okay, great, cool. Now we got all these lines still, but again, we can simplify this. So watch. Watch and learn. See where these lines are here? Where his fingers are, where the knuckles are? See that? What I want to do is I want to find those in my drawing and replicate it. So for example, this point right here, I'm going to guess it's above 6. It's around here. And I want to find each of these spots. I should use, let me use a red thing so you guys can see that better. That spot, that spot, that spot, that spot right there. And I want to find those dots. Hopefully you can see that. I know it's a little bit small. But what I can do now is once I find those spots on my drawing, and then this one I'm going to guess is around here, 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 and here. All I have to do is draw these curves to connect them. This goes this way. 2, 3, 4. And now that I have that, just connect those. Okay, and now I've got that whole sequence. Now these two lines here meet at about this point near 5. This goes like this, like that. This line is short. And then there's this direction change. It goes down this way, comes back, slight hoop. All right. See how things are taking shape here? I want to find where this spot is right here and see that. It's about here. And then it curves. Right? Working out. It's working out. And then again, we can fatten up these lines later if you want to. But it looks like it's going to work out. And then there's this whole sequence right here. Let's go ahead and use the highlighter again to see that now. See that piece right here? I want to find that. That's almost right in the middle. This is about here. Right? And then there's this, see this curve right there? Goes back this way, curves up, this comes down. All right, works. Now that would be filled in, and that would compensate and fill it in and make the drawing more accurate. This line down here goes to here and here. This line goes here and here. So you can see that there's a lot more work to do, but we can do it if we take this approach. Remember, look for where the drawing is touching the grid, and then once you do that, it's a matter of just placing the dots where they are, connect the dots, and then you're going to see that this drawing is really going to take shape, and it's going to look pretty good.